And now to the local news. Opposed to their own statement last year of not having any more animals in their wildlife reserve, Hirscheck Wildlife Reserve announced to actually have two new bears, named Koda and Anouk. These two Eurasian brown bears have been saved from hunters and are now searching for a new home. As early concepts show, this will be actually Hirscheck, our local wildlife reserve. However, the park and local authorities have agreed to have some very strong regulations building the new habitat. More info about that from our local partner in the wildlife reserve, Rudy Rankamel. He's gonna talk you through the new project.
And with that, welcome to today's Speedbuild. I am here in Hirscheck and this is me, first of all starting with a little ditch. So as for the regulations, we are not allowed to change any major thing of this hill over here. We are allowed to dig into it, but the face of the hill and the surrounding trees, just as the amount of trees, needs to stay somewhat similar. Local authorities have agreed to keep the basic momentum of what they had beforehand, because the wildlife reserve actually agreed to a contract to reduce the CO2 amount in the region, and hence they need to fulfill a certain quota of trees and so on. About the landscape itself, that was mostly about the needed machinery for digging into a mountain, so they agreed to not do as much of a mountain work over here. So what we're going to see is we are adding first of all a little waterfall feature that will help also provide a bit of an interesting look for the guest, but equally also keeps a bit of a water flow to not have freezing water in the winter. As for the shelter, local authorities and the park agreed on being a bit more creative, so we use the mountain itself as a storage building. We are allowed to dig into it. The soil and the stone and stuff excavated will be used around the area for some other projects as well, so that we will keep the resource usage minimum in that sense that it's not wasted. And we do have the option to put in a very nice little area for our animals to, you know, delve in and have you know, just a bit of shelter as well as privacy. Very important to these animals. I mean, they are endangered, they are kind of secured from captivity. Koda, the male bear, and obviously the name coming after one of my favorite movies, but also surely the people who rescued them from the organization have had that in mind. And Anouk is another wonderful name, even though maybe not too fitting for the Eurasian bear, it still is a pretty fitting name for a female bear. If they will ever get offspring or not, we do not know yet. It would be very nice for a reintroduction program, even though it's a little bit tricky with bears. However, we already talked to some other projects that do reintroduction programs for Eurasian bears, who are basically being reintroduced more and more into the wildlife area, which is great to hear. And so Wildlife Reserve in Hirscheck actually wants to contribute its part already in that as well. So with that, we agreed on this, and you can see I am dressing up the rooms as much as I could possibly do. We are focusing a little bit on this backstage because usually I don't really do the backstage too much. Simply because you cannot see them. But in this specific case, you will be seeing there are a couple of cinematics coming up. There is a couple of things coming up with this specific area, and I'm planning to have a webcam added to this shelter as well, so people can see that, also for education purposes. But again, most likely and foremost, this is for the privacy of the animals and for easy kind of access to the animals if they are in need of veterinarian services or anything else. This, my friends, has been the backstory of today's build, and now in some more informal commentary, this project is a little bit of an attempt now to change up my video style a little bit, and I'm really in need of your feedback later on if you like it or not. Well, as far as this shelter goes, you can see it in action in a second. There you go. This is the finished version. Unfortunately, we do have to deal with the Planet Zoo lighting opposed to the wonderful ones in newer games, but here you can see both of them taking a wonderful nap. As little bears always do, have your head always close to the guiders and stuff like that, because that's what you do to feel safe, I guess. Anyways, we continue with a bit of nice work here around the water feature. We're using one of the more familiar techniques in Planet Zoo, using these pieces here that look fantastic as kind of riversides, you know, muddy, but at the same time you can use them to look really like this kind of almost like shaved out, digged out area, which by the water over time is kind of a natural area that has been taken away from the soil because of the water pushing against it and because of the movement of the water. There's always like that kind of C shape with a little bit of an overhang, and below that the water has carved into the soil. I always love that. But obviously we also need to put in rock work. As always, you know that, guys. Rock work is absolutely important for making every habitat look good. And as always, I'm trying to mix and match as best as possible to have a lot of different textures going on to make it really interesting to look at, and also try to, well, guide the walkways for the animals, because these rocks, the aquatic rocks over here, as beautiful as they are, they're really painful when it comes to the way how animals can walk. This is a very hard punishment, I should say, on your traversable area. Like, these rocks really do not work great when it comes to traversing for the animals, so be careful to where you place them. But if you do correctly, you can see here in that clip how beautiful eventually this will look. But with all good habitats, we should also prevent guests from running into it, even though I do think in this specific case it's more likely to keep the animal inside, because every normal guest should not have the will to go into a Eurasian bear habitat. However, we must keep the animals inside of it to not have them go rogue on our guests eventually if they're hungry. But, we'll ask our keepers to not keep them hungry. Well, I must say that this habitat build was also super exciting. We did have our first live stream in over half a year, I guess. For those of you who tuned in, thank you very much. That was really, really enjoyable. I'm not entirely sure if I will be able to stream tonight, because tomorrow is going to be my birthday. So maybe we do actually stream into my birthday. I gotta talk to my wife how we do things, but this could be a thing. But anyways, thank you to all of them who have been there. And in case you want to join a future live stream, for the moment I'll do some restream for YouTube and Twitch. Eventually I may go over to Twitch, because YouTube just isn't as great for live streaming, still not. But eventually we'll see how that goes and how many people watch on different channels. Last time, successfully, the YouTube viewers were a bit higher, but whatever. We'll see about that for the future. I definitely want to look more into streaming. While I do say that, we are bringing one other mandatory thing in. This little log cabin over here was also meant to stay. They asked us to keep this build because it was made before the park even existed and restored now as a little shelter here. Also, I find it very good looking, so that was really not a painful demand from the local authorities, and so I am gladly putting that in as a centerpiece here, which is a nice little shelter specifically for the summer to search for some shade, simply because I'm a little bit hesitant when it comes to putting down trees in this game, simply because the shadow doesn't look that good, and eventually you do destroy the look of your habitat when you have it too dense, even though sometimes I want to be a bit more brave on the shade. I don't know. It's a little bit, trial and error, what is good and what not. And in this specific case, there isn't that much sun anyways, because from the sun position, it's not really meant to be the best at this point, because I needed to use that location as local authorities asked me to do, and so we are building with what we have. Now, as for building, what I'm not really trying to make spare any expense with is obviously foliage, as always. Foliage is, for me personally, the most important thing for these kind of natural habitats, and you can see I'm like putting down foliage like a madman, trying to use also some really cool other trees. The apple tree sometimes has a very nice texture to use it, like specifically for the leaves. Also having these willow trees here and there to make sure that they also get their moment in the sun, so to say. And also, obviously, I put some one-side glass over here in all these cracks in the wall that I still find that looks good. So here you can see a bit of the result with the nature, how good that looks, how natural. Really big fan of it. Now, we do have to do one last thing, and this is the planter in before the habitat. This is where the old pathway was guided, and as we are not able to change that one, I kind of decided to go for a little bit of an additional walkway up to a higher position. I'm using one of my favorite tricks of just putting down rocks and then lower them into the ground to create that effect of a bit of rubble here and there and so on. However, again, that is super costly yet again on your traversable area. So be very very careful. It looks, in my opinion, it looks absolutely ridiculous and fantastic, as you can see on this little piece-by-piece time-lapse over here. But oh boy, it does destroy the traversable area. It took me about an hour to make sure the habitat is nicely traversable and still looks as good as I wanted to. Speaking of, we always also need viewing galleries and stuff like that. So there is a big reward for you going up the hill, because this is a one-way area and basically a dead end, and so you need to give people a reason to go there, which is a very nice look into their cave up the hill, which they will eventually use quite a lot. And so you can go all the way up here, and I also put a security kind of railing to the inside so that the bears don't go too close to the glass to never really get the idea to attack it or whatnot. Last but not least, I'm using some of my beloved blueprints I have used already across the entire park, hiding some of these areas here, this kind of back area where people go in. I don't do too much of it right now because this will be backstage eventually and all hidden by nature, so there's no point in me doing too much, but so I just put a couple of things in here to hide the views. And yeah, last but not least, I am filling in some areas with some more rock textures because I really like the rock texture more than the in-game terrain rock texture. And as always, I left that in for a bit, fixing some of the traversable area issues that I came across during the build, but I wanted to just fill in the main build. Here you can see that doing a bit of changes until it fits, and then give the bear actually a reason to go in. And also putting a couple dead trees here and there, just making sure that traversable area works. You've already seen that pretty much already on screen in a brief moment. It is not the bestest traversable area ever, but as this is Sandbox, you can imagine in the real world they would have access to way more of their habitat. I just decided to have a very straightforward trail this time around, and it just kind of looks cool when the bears come down the hill, to be honest. And then they have two different options to go, even though 90% of the time they take the route through the river, which I find good. It's looking good, you know, at the end of the day. And when I knew where exactly they could run, I just took my path tool or paint tool over here and painted this with soil, which is where they walk the most. Yeah, at the very end, it's just about putting in some last details, walls, and other kind of details to just, you know, hide these ugly curbs. It is still, at the end of the day, Planet Zoo. We don't have the beautiful new path system from Planet Coaster, so we still need to hide away these ugly curbs. And yeah, oh boy, I cannot tell you how much I'm looking forward to hopefully Planet Zoo 2 featuring the new pathing tool. I mean, everything else would just be madly ridiculous if Frontier decides to, for whatever reason, not give us this new tool with all the improvements made in the first year of Planet Coaster 2. Honestly, this may be one of the most fleshed out tools in Planet Coaster 2 by now. It's just so much superior. It's beyond me. Anyhow, last detail is a little naming sign over here for the Eurasian Brown Bear. By the way, obviously that is a mod, in case you've been wondering where your brown bear is. I should have said that earlier, but I thought that was obvious. But yeah, here you can see this is the final touch here to know what the guests are expecting over here. And then we do a bit of a fly-in to see how that habitat looks at the end. And also then we were ready to welcome our bears. Here you can see them running into their shelter because it started rain, but just shortly after they decided to leave the building again to explore their wonderful habitat. You can see over here Anouk. Anouk also turned out to be the bear who loved just carrying around that little toy over here quite a lot. You'll find the toy everywhere in the habitat because she was absolutely obsessed with it. But also Anouk had not Anouk, this is Coda, by the way, who had a good time. Coda came down the hill, which he loved doing. He was always the one going up the hill, while Anouk spent her time mostly down, traveling between the waters and the shelter. But you know, there's one thing that brought both back eventually, and that is food, as you can tell. But here we have a nice little flyover to show you again the shelter. Here's you going in, and they do love it even at daytime to take a little nap. As you can see, this is the little clip you've already seen, but just to showcase, they just love taking a nap to the inside of their shelter. So that was a good kind of idea. But then when there's good weather outside, as I said earlier, specifically Anouk, she loves having a little swim in the waters, always having a good time here, just perfectly for the guest to view. And when not, she's carrying her favorite toy, as I said, dripping it into the river to play with it on or in the river. And as said, Koda is always up the hills. He's just traveling across the whole, he's just willing to walk a lot more, specifically when there is food. Again, as I said, whenever they smell food, they were about to run down and gather together. It's very hard to tell where he is, but eventually from different viewing angles, you can see Koda running down the hill to get some food. Eventually, he was successful, and then because it was starting to snow, he decided to, go in, seek some shelter real quick to, just enjoy a bit more warmth. As you can see, first flakes falling down. While that was happening, though, Anouk, she, as always, had a little swim, and she was not minding at all that the snow was coming down. I mean, bears with their fur have a good time anyways in the snow, so it wasn't too surprising that just shortly after, Koda also decided to join in the fun and go a bit for a swim. But then shortly after also leaving the waters, and Anouk decided to follow him around. But guests were also happy seeing them even in the snowy business. That was good for the guests alike, also good for us, and that just finishes off the first couple weeks of Anouk and Koda in their brand new habitat, secured from the hunters and well fitted, suited into Hirscheck Wildlife Reserve. I hope you guys enjoyed today's build. A bit more storytelling, a bit more nice focus on the build. I do enjoy building in Plant Zoo so much, and if you guys enjoyed this video, please do me a favor, leave a like or a comment, and also in any case, please sub to the channel if you haven't already. There's a lot more coming in this kind of, I try to just try out some new styles and making sure you guys have a good journey throughout the video. It's a bit more engaging, whatever I can do to make it more enjoyable for you, but also tell the algorithm you are happy. So in any case, if there's anything else you want to watch, I'll put a wonderful video at the end of this wonderful video. So click the next one if you have some spare time. Help me figure out this freaking YouTube thing, and also make sure you guys have a good time. I had some very cool builds lately, so make sure to check that one out. And now I can say have a wonderful time. Thank you so much as always for watching. I hope I made your day better. You certainly did mine. And now, bye!